Hey, welcome to another video about high-low, your high-low game. So in the last video, we showed you how to make a random integer. So you're going to have to make a random integer for the computer to make, and then you're going to have the player, being you, guessing it. Now in the last video, we made it so you could only guess if it was exactly right. So it was adding two numbers, and if you typed in the right number, all was well. And if it was too low, too high. Well, what if we want to make it less restrictive? So in the high-low game, we want you to actually tell the person, well, is that too high the number or is it too low and they need to make another guess? And to do that, we're going to start by pretty much the same way. We're going to have the computer generate a number. And so I'm going to do that in the setup then. So in setup, and I'm going to call this person computer, and we want to make them have an integer. That is a random number between, let's say, 1 and 5 to start. And we do need to initialize that variable. So we're going to go let computer. And we don't need to make it equal to anything right now, because in the setup right away, we make it equal to something. It's a little bit angry. Have a double brackets there. Close that bracket up. Okay, so now once we have that, let's make sure it's working. So we're going to go print, and we're going to print out that computer variable. And just make sure it's working here in the console. Okay, it looks like it generated 2 this time. We'll just hit play again. Yep, generating different ones each time. So now it's 1, now it's 1 again, and 4. Perfect. Now the next part of this then is we want to actually have it take in that key pressed and take in when someone presses something on the keyboard. So we're going to go function, and it will be key pressed. Now this looks very similar to what you had before, but we're gonna have an if statement to start. So if, and we'll start with the correct one. So if the person's input actually equals what it's supposed to, that's probably the easiest one. So if your key is equal to our computer variable, then what do we want to happen? Well, we're going to put some text on the page and say, hey, you're correct. So we'll put that in a string. You are correct. Yes. And we'll put that at 50, 100. There we go. Okay, so we should be able to test this right away. We can see that it's at 1. So if I hit 1, nothing's happening. The reason is, we talked about this before, this background is actually drawing it over and over and over and over again. So we need to get rid of that background there. Okay, so let's try again. So this time we're going to hit 2. And there we go. You are correct. Now the problem is if I keep on hitting 2, you're going to see it's going to get darker, darker, darker. So how we fix that then is that background that was in this draw function, and that draw function is happening over and over and over again. We want that to happen right before it prints the text, but only once. So I'm going to put in this function key pressed. So every time I press a key, the background will refresh. And we'll put that at like 200, I think. That should look okay. So now when I hit a button, you can actually see right now we don't have a background, but I'll hit 1. It says you are correct. It would be nice if that background showed up at the very start, but only once. And so you're going to put that in the setup. That's what happens at the very, very start of this. So background 200. Again, that only happens once. I don't really want this printing over and over again, but it's not affecting anything. It's in my console. Okay, so there's our first case. Now the second case is probably the one you need more help with though. So what if your key is too high? And those words I just used. What if the key is too high? What if the key is greater than the computer generated number? Now we could go if key is, well, we said greater than computer. I'm not sure why I put an equal sign there. Then what do we want to happen? Now this would be okay. There's something I don't love. I'll explain it to you afterwards, but we're going to see that it will work. So the key is greater than computer, meaning the key is number is bigger than the computer number. We want some text. And that text will be too high. Guess again. We got a very enthusiastic game. That's why there's lots of explanation. exclamation marks. Okay, let's try this out. So we can see in the console it's saying 3. So if I say 3, hey, you're correct. Perfect. If I say 5, oh, perfect. Too high. Guess again. We still have one more case we've been dealt with. What if it's too low? So if I hit 1, nothing happens. It just goes blank the screen, which is good because the background is wiping everything out, even though the key doesn't match either of these. Now that also has another issue though, is we should always end it with like an else thing. So let's say you type in something that doesn't make sense at all. We want the computer to know what to do with that. So I would end this off with an else statement. Okay, so that's how I would end this. So another, if none of these things are true, what do you want to happen? Now that might also cause some issues because if you hit some of the number keys, but at this point in the game, I'm not as worried about that. I also don't really want the computer reading all of the extra code if it's not necessary. And this is why this double if statement isn't great. And I'd end up having 3 if statements if I did all 3 cases like you will. So we don't want the computer to have to read multiple lines of code. That takes more processing power. And if you make a big game or a big program, that's going to really slow it down. So to stop that from happening, we're going to do an else if. Meaning, if this if statement is true, it doesn't read this code. Any of this code, this else if, until you see another if statement. But if this is not true, then I'll go to the next one. And if this statement's true, then that's the only line of code it reads. It doesn't read any of the other else ifs. And you can have like 5 else ifs there. Okay, I'm not going to do any more after that. I'm going to leave you do that. Some other things, you should make sure you have some kind of text on there giving the instructions to the person. So make sure you read what the assignment wants you to do. And my hint to you for making another game, or make it so the person can play again, is it should be in this if statement here when they get it correct. And then to make, you've already kind of seen how to make a score, and that's going to be very similar to the amount of guesses they took. Right, if you have any questions, please let me know.